Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Buckle up, this one doesn't start with a love story. It starts with a lie that thought it could hide forever. It wasn't the lipstick on her collar. It wasn't the late-night texts or the hushed phone calls behind the bathroom door. No, I ignored all of that. I had to, because if I acknowledged even one crack, the whole damn wall would crumble. And I wasn't ready to admit I'd been living in a house made of paper. The truth punched me in the face on a random Thursday at 6:42 p.m. I remember the time exactly because I was microwaving leftover meatloaf while watching a YouTube tutorial on how to reroute a shower. My phone buzzed, a message from Valerie. 3 words. Going out tonight. That was it. No emoji. No question mark. Not even a love you. I stared at the screen, heart beating in that sick way it does when you already know something's wrong, but you pretend you don't. So I typed back. Have fun on your date. No joke. No smiley face. Just that. Sent it, tossed the phone on the counter, and watched the microwave spin like the world hadn't just shifted under my feet. 5 minutes later, I heard her heels clicking down the stairs like a countdown to a detonation. She stepped into the kitchen, dressed in something I hadn't seen since our last wedding we attended. Not ours, of course. Hers was tighter than I remembered. So was her smile. She didn't say anything at first. Just grabbed her purse, fiddled with her keys, then asked, "Did you need anything while I'm out?" That's when I looked at her. Really looked. And her face, her panicked, wide-eyed, twitch of the lip face, gave it all away. She tried to laugh it off, said I was being dramatic, but her throat pulsed like she was swallowing fire. I said nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched her walk out, and for the first time in a very long time, I realized I wasn't watching my wife leave for dinner. I was watching a stranger vanish into someone else's night. And that's when I decided. I wasn't going to be the clueless husband anymore. Not tonight. Not after that look. She didn't wear that dress for me. I hadn't seen it since our 3rd anniversary, back when we still touched each other without hesitation and laughed without checking our phones. It was emerald green, low at the back, with tiny shimmering threads that caught light like they were made to be seen. But tonight, that dress wasn't for my eyes. It was for someone else. Someone who hadn't spent the last 6 months wondering why dinner conversations had turned into awkward silences and why her hugs started feeling like exit strategies. I wish I could tell you that was the moment I grew a spine. That I stood up, dusted myself off, and declared I would never be treated like this again. But that's not what happened. Instead, I walked into our shared bathroom and opened the drawer she never let me organize, the one she said was hers. Inside, behind all the makeup brushes and unopened hair ties, was her old iPad. Dead, dusty, forgotten. Or so she thought. I charged it in the bedroom while Bandit, our cat, the only creature in the house who still looked at me like I mattered, curled up beside me like he knew I needed something alive nearby. When the screen finally lit up, it hit me. The passcode. I stared at the blinking numbers, unsure if I was ready for what might be behind them. Then I tried my birthday. Wrong. Her birthday. Wrong again. Out of desperation, I typed in the day we got married. It unlocked. The first thing I checked was the email. Not the main inbox. She wasn't that careless. But the archived folder? Buried in there were dozens of messages from someone labeled Studio B. The names sounded innocent enough, but the subject lines weren't. Same place as last time. Can't stop thinking about Tuesday. Still wearing my shirt. My breath caught. My palms turned cold. And against my better judgment, I opened one of the longer threads. What I read made my knees go numb. She talked to him like she used to talk to me. Shared jokes, shared memories, even complaints about me. How I was sweet but boring, safe but dull, and how she felt like she was wasting her best years playing house with someone who stopped surprising her years ago. I didn't realize I was crying until I saw the screen blur. Then came the photos. One after another. Dimly lit selfies in hotel mirrors, shots of 2 wine glasses on some unfamiliar balcony, a close-up of her fingers wrapped in someone else's. I could barely breathe. Each image felt like a needle threading its way through my chest. But what truly broke me, what completely shattered the floor beneath me, was a video file. 32 seconds. Just long enough to confirm that the dress she wore tonight wasn't just about elegance. It was about a promise to someone else. A promise that I was never meant to hear, never meant to see. She was whispering to someone, a man I couldn't fully see, and she said, "Tonight's the last time we have to lie." Lie. The word echoed in my head like a siren. All those nights, she came home late. All those moments I asked if everything was okay, and she just smiled. All those times I told myself to trust her, because love means trust, right? At around 3:30 a.m., I heard her keys in the door. She walked in like someone trying not to wake a roommate, not a husband. Quiet steps, shoes off at the door, coat draped over the chair, not hung like usual. She didn't peek into the bedroom, didn't check if I was awake, didn't even kiss my forehead the way she used to, even during her coldest nights. No, she went straight to the guest bathroom, ran the shower, and stayed in there for nearly an hour. And all I could think about was whose skin she was scrubbing off. The next morning, I played it cool. I made coffee. I acted like the clueless husband she always hoped I would stay. I didn't bring up the tablet. Didn't ask who Studio B was. I just smiled like the idiot she described in her emails. But something was shifting inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just awareness. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I knew now that this wasn't a one-night mistake or some emotional confusion. This was a double life. A second script she'd been living while I played the fool in the background of her main story. Around noon, she came into the kitchen in her usual post-date outfit. Sweats, no makeup, hair tied back like she'd spent the night at home. She poured herself coffee and casually asked, "Sleep okay?" I smiled. Like a rock. She didn't look at me. That told me everything. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed air. I grabbed my coat, said I was heading to the hardware store, which, ironically, was true, and walked out. But I didn't drive to the store. I drove downtown, to the hotel from the email confirmation I had screenshotted the night before. The watermark on one of her mirror selfies made it easy to find. The Parkland Suites. Fancy place. Way out of our budget, unless she'd been charging things to her own card. Which, turns out, she had. I found the receipt in her inbox. A card I never knew she opened. Different billing address, too. One I didn't recognize. I stood across the street from the hotel for almost 30 minutes, heart racing, palms sweaty, hoping I wouldn't see what I already knew I would. And then, there he was. He came out first. Mid-40s. Polished. Tall. With that smug confidence you only get when you know you're being chosen over someone else. He checked his watch, adjusted his coat, and walked straight to a car that looked like it hadn't seen a single payment missed. He wasn't just some fling. He was someone with permanence. Someone she was building a future with. And that's when I saw her. She came out minutes later, in the same green dress from last night, now covered by a long coat. Her hair was still curled, and she looked tired, but happy. Genuinely happy. She smiled to herself while checking her phone, completely unaware that I was watching her from across the street. That smile, I hadn't seen it in months. Not once directed at me. She got into her car and drove off without a glance behind. By Monday morning, I couldn't stand it. I waited until she left for work, grabbed the spare key to her car, and drove it to a quiet gas station a few miles away. I parked behind the building, took a deep breath, and started digging. First in the glove box, nothing but napkins, expired registration, and a tube of lipstick I'd never seen her wear. Then I popped the trunk. Gym bag, yoga mat, running shoes. Innocent enough. But tucked in a side pouch, zipped tight, was a second phone. Cheap. Burned. One of those disposable models you buy when you don't want anyone to trace you. My stomach dropped. It was charged, barely, and when I powered it on, it didn't ask for a passcode. Part of me wishes it had. The messages weren't even hidden. Dozens of threads with a single name, Grant. A name she'd never spoken in our home. A name that, now, felt like a sledgehammer to everything I thought I knew. He wasn't just someone she was meeting up with. He was someone she'd been building a life with. They had pet names. Inside jokes. Plans. She sent him pictures, not dirty ones, but worse. Ones from our home. Our living room. The backyard I planted shrubs in. She even sent a photo of Bandit once, captioned, "He still sits at the window like he's waiting for something." It breaks my heart. She was talking about me, wasn't she? The oldest messages were nearly a year old. A year. That meant every holiday, every dinner, every, "I'm just tired tonight." It had all been staged. Rehearsed. Rewritten with him waiting in the wings. I scrolled for hours, not because I needed more proof, but because I couldn't stop. It was like watching a train crash in slow motion and realizing I was the passenger who'd bought everyone's ticket. One message stood out. It was dated 6 months ago, around the time I started sleeping on the edge of the bed. "He's sweet, but he has no edge. I need more. You make me feel real again. I read it 20 times. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the front seat of her car, with the radio off and the engine dead, staring out at a parking lot full of oil stains and wind-blown receipts, wondering when exactly I stopped being real to her. The phone buzzed. New message. From Grant. Can't stop thinking about last night. Don't forget our check-in at 3. Love you. I don't know what scared me more, that he said love you, or that she hadn't told him to stop. I turned off the phone, zipped it back into the gym bag, and closed the trunk. I didn't smash it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I stared at that last message from Grant longer than I care to admit. I reread it until the words blurred, until I started hearing them in my head like he was speaking directly to me. Don't forget our check-in at 3. That line burned itself into my brain. Check-in. Like what, a meeting? A hotel reservation? Some twisted inside joke? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't just keep sitting on this anymore. Every second I waited, every moment I pretended not to know, it felt like I was agreeing to be the fool in my own story. And I was done with that. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the number. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a voicemail. Maybe silence. Maybe my own nerves would short-circuit before it rang twice. But it rang once. Then twice. Then a calm, confident voice answered. Yeah? Not hello. Not who's this. Just, yeah. Like he knew exactly who was calling. I froze. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I just listened to him breathing through the other end, completely unaware that he was speaking to the man whose life he'd been burrowing into for over a year. Finally, I said it. Does Valerie still lie to you? Or does she save that just for me? There was silence. Not long, just a beat. But I heard it. That flicker of hesitation. Then he said, "Who is this?" I didn't answer. I hung up. I didn't want a conversation. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted him to feel it. That jolt of panic, the creeping uncertainty. I wanted him to go into that 3 p.m. check-in, wondering who was watching. I wanted her to walk into it wondering if her secrets had finally come unwrapped. Because I was done playing the quiet husband. That role was dead. What came next wasn't about revenge or theatrics. It was about exposure. About truth. About dragging everything she'd kept in the shadows out into the brutal light. I went home, made myself a sandwich I didn't eat, and opened her old tablet again. I went back into the email threads, screenshotting everything. Their conversations, the hotel receipts, the messages about me. I didn't care how much it hurt to reread them. I needed evidence. I needed clarity. I wasn't going to confront her and have her spin it into some manipulative spiral. I wasn't going to be gaslit into thinking I'd imagined it all. Around 2:15, she texted me. "Hey babe, going to be a little late tonight. Last-minute meeting. Love you." I stared at the word babe like it was a foreign language. Love you. Like those words still meant anything. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had other plans. At 2:58 p.m., I parked my car down the street from the Greystone Hotel, a high-rise glass building that tried to look like it belonged in Manhattan, even though it sat awkwardly in the middle of our sleepy town. I watched the front doors from behind tinted windows, heart pounding, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might float away. At exactly 3:07, Valerie walked through those doors. She wasn't in office attire. No laptop bag. No flustered, late for a meeting energy. She was wearing a dark sweater, heels, and subtle lipstick. Casual, but not careless. And not 5 seconds behind her came Grant, same guy from before, the one I watched from across the street. They didn't kiss. They didn't hold hands. But they walked together, side by side, like two people who'd done this dozens of times. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an affair. It was a relationship. A parallel universe I wasn't part of. And worse, they were good at it. I stayed in my car, watching them disappear into the lobby. I could have followed. Could have walked in and made a scene. But I didn't. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't interested in public chaos. I wanted precision. And that meant patience. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts. Just the sound of my thoughts unraveling everything I believed about the last year of my life. When I walked through the door, Bandit meowed and rubbed against my leg like he always did, loyal and oblivious. I knelt down, scratched behind his ear, and whispered, "Don't worry, buddy. We're not the stupid ones." I sat at my desk that night, staring at a blank Word document, knowing exactly what I wanted to say, but not how to start it. It's a weird thing. Writing a letter you know will detonate your entire life. It's like holding a match over a soaked field, knowing once it touches, everything dry will burn. But there was something cleansing about it too. Like maybe if I wrote the truth down just once, plainly, directly, it would stop living inside my chest like a parasite. So I started with what mattered most. To Valerie and Grant. That's right, both names. No secrets. No space for denial. I wanted them to read it together, or apart, but to both know this wasn't a confrontation. It was a closure. On my terms. I didn't scream in the letter. I didn't insult. I didn't spiral into poetic tragedy. I kept it simple. Cold. Documented. Every hotel receipt. Every message. Every photo. I referenced specific quotes from their texts, the ones that haunted me the most. Like when she said I was comfortable, like an old hoodie, soft, predictable, and easy to ignore. I told her I wasn't angry at her for falling out of love. I was angry that she pretended she hadn't. I told Grant he could keep the woman who needed 2 phones to feel whole. And then I ended it with this. You were never careful enough. I was never blind enough. But now you're both exposed. Don't worry, no scenes. No drama. Just gone. I printed it, folded it with hands that didn't shake for once, and slid it into a plain white envelope. No return address. No signature. Just the truth, sitting there like a brick, waiting to be delivered. But timing was everything. I didn't want her to get it before she saw me. No, that would make it messy. I wanted her to look me in the eye one last time, to lie to my face the way she'd practiced so effortlessly, and then open that envelope when I was already out of reach. So the next morning, I woke up before her. I made coffee. I fed Bandit. I even offered to pack her lunch, which nearly made her raise an eyebrow, but I smiled through it like I always did. She said she was going to work, which, at this point, felt like watching a kid hide candy behind their back while chocolate smeared their lips. After she left, I placed the envelope inside her dresser, exactly where she'd find it. Then I opened our joint account and transferred my share into a new account I'd already prepared. Quiet. Legal. Clean. I canceled my cards, changed my passwords, rerouted my direct deposit, and erased every trace of myself from the financial map we once shared. I left my wedding ring in her jewelry box, right next to the earrings she only wore for him. Then I packed a single duffel bag. Just the essentials. I didn't take her favorite sweater I used to borrow. I didn't take any of the anniversary cards we'd saved in that dusty box under the bed. I didn't even take the framed photo of us from our honeymoon, the one where she laughed so hard she cried. I didn't need reminders. I'd been living with a ghost version of her long enough. The final piece was Bandit. I couldn't leave him behind. He was mine before she came into the picture, and he'd never betrayed me with silence or smiles that meant nothing. He rode in the passenger seat like he always did when we drove to my parents' cabin, the place she always said was too remote for her taste, which worked perfectly, because that's exactly where I was headed. A few hours later, I turned my phone off and tossed it in the glove box. The sky stretched wide above me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually breathe. Meanwhile, back home, I imagined her walking into the room, finding the envelope, reading every word. Maybe she'd be angry. 3 days of silence, 3 days of imagining her finding the letter, rereading it over and over, searching for some crack in my words that might give her a way back in. Maybe she waited because she didn't know what to say. Maybe she was hoping I'd break first, send a weak little text, ask if she'd read it, try to fix something already burned to ash. She had no idea who she was dealing with anymore. I was sitting on the porch of my father's cabin when the phone buzzed. Bandit was curled up beside me, blinking lazily at the wind that rattled the pine trees. My breath formed little ghosts in the cold air. I'd been watching the same squirrel try to climb the bird feeder for almost an hour when her name flashed across the screen. Valerie. I let it ring all the way through. She called again, and again. 10 minutes later, a text came through. Please, just talk to me. Another text followed. It's not what you think. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Not what I think. I'd seen the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts. I called the guy. I knew exactly what it was, and more importantly, what it wasn't. It wasn't love. Not anymore. Not between us. Still, curiosity itched. So I answered the next call. No hello. Just silence. And then, a shaky breath. You didn't have to leave like that, she said. I stared out at the trees and said nothing. I mean, I know I screwed up. I know. But disappearing? Taking the money? That was cruel. I finally spoke, calm and steady. You want to talk about cruel? She paused. I never meant for it to get that far. Grant was, I don't know. He listened. That stung more than I wanted it to. I always listened. That was half the problem. I listened too much and spoke too little. I let her vent, let her retreat, let her change without challenge. I gave her space when she needed warmth, gave her silence when she needed confrontation. And in the end, she mistook my patience for apathy. Do you love him? I asked. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I was going to end it, she said finally, as if that changed anything. But you didn't, I replied. You had a second life, Valerie. You built it. You watered it. You let it grow while I waited in the background, wondering what I did wrong. Her voice cracked. You didn't do anything wrong. But that was the worst part, wasn't it? I didn't do anything wrong, and still, I was left behind. I wasn't angry, I said, not until now. Not until you made this call and tried to spin it. You were supposed to read the letter and understand that it was done. Not a cliffhanger. Not an invitation. A period. I don't want to lose everything, she whispered. You already did. And then I ended the call. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream into the woods. I just sat there, breathing in the cold like it was medicine. I expected her to call again. Maybe Grant too. But hours passed. The sun dipped below the ridge. And all I heard was wind and branches and the soft, rhythmic purring of the only living being in my life who never lied to me. A week passed. Then another. The silence held. No more calls, no more texts. She must have realized it was over, truly over, and that I wasn't bluffing. I didn't block her, though. I didn't need to. Sometimes the loudest ending is the quietest goodbye. I spent those first 2 weeks clearing out my head, chopping wood, fixing broken hinges on the cabin doors, watching Bandit follow sunbeams from one corner of the room to the next. It was the kind of peace I forgot existed, the kind that didn't depend on someone else choosing to love me right. Then, on a Tuesday morning, funny how Tuesdays always seem to carry weight in my life, a letter showed up in the mailbox at the end of the gravel road. No name on the front, no return address, just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen since our wedding invitations. I thought about throwing it away, but curiosity still had a pulse. Inside was a single page. No apology, no explanation, just 4 lines. I see it now. You were the only one who stayed kind. I confused quiet for weakness. I hope, one day, you'll remember me softer than I was. There was no signature, but it didn't need one. I read it once. Then I folded it, walked to the fireplace, and tossed it in. I watched it curl and blacken until the flames consumed even the softest parts of her words. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel victorious. What I felt was free. A few days later, I made a decision. I got in the car with Bandit and drove south. Not to escape, but to start. I found a small coastal town with a used bookstore that needed someone to fix their computer system. The woman who hired me was kind and didn't ask about my past. She just smiled, handed me a cup of coffee, and said, "Take your time." That phrase hit different this time. Now I spend my mornings fixing old machines and my evenings reading on a bench near the ocean. I still flinch at the sound of high heels on pavement, and I still wake up sometimes wondering if she'll show up again. But the ache is dull now. The kind that reminds you where the wound was, but not how deep it used to bleed. If you're listening to this, and you're in the middle of your own unraveling, I hope you know it gets better. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in the way you expect. But sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is walk out. Or, like in my case, give you the reason to walk away for good. Thanks for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever experienced a historical turning point in your own life, a moment when everything changed, I'd love to hear about it. Share it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real confessions that leave a mark.